Marcus Noland, Claudia Rosette, also HRNK author, David Hawk, and all of the other good and dear friends and supporters of HRNK. Obviously, our two speakers today are the two hosts of the Pyonghattan YouTube program. So we came up with the idea of naming this program inspired by the song you've just listened to. First we take Manhattan, then we take Berlin, Leonard Cohen. I'm old enough to remember Leonard Cohen. So first we take Pyonghattan, then we take Pyongyang. This would be, by the way, a great greeting for those in our world of North Korean human rights. The greeting is first we take Pyonghattan, and the answer is then we take Pyongyang. By the way, this is not about a call to insurrection or anything like that. This program is meant to direct attention toward the importance of listening to the voices of former North Koreans, in particular, young, educated, bright North Koreans who have assumed a very assertive role, such as our two guests today. We all know that because of travel restrictions within North Korea, 80% of those who escaped to the south do not have a high school degree. 80% of them were job insecure, even by North Korean standards. 80% of them came from rundown areas, even by North Korean standards. However, there is a group of highly trained, highly educated former North Koreans who are now living in the free world. We want to emphasize the importance of their role in communicating first and foremost to the Pyongyang Republic, to the elites in Pyongyang, because true change, perhaps the same way that it happened in Romania in December 1989, true change will come only from the core elites of North Korea once they understand and they learn from the precedent of their Eastern European peers that, after all, the great winners of the post-communist transition in Eastern Europe were precisely those elites, the second and the third echelon of the previous leadership that, for the better or the worse, became great winners of the post-communist transition. Without further ado, let me introduce our speakers. Mrs. Seo-hyun Lee was born and raised in central Pyongyang, downtown Pyongyang in North Korea. She went to China to study while she was a sophomore at North Korea's top university, Kim Il-sung University. She earned her bachelor's degree in science and finance from Dongbei University of Economics and Finance in 2014. She escaped North Korea in October 2014 during a very heightened period of brutal purges by the Kim Jong-Un regime, also thoroughly documented by our organization, the U.S. Committee for Human Rights in North Korea. She cherishes a long-term vision of building a liberal democratic system and bringing freedom to North Korea. She's in process of pursuing further graduate studies, and of course, together with her brother, Hyeun-seung, she currently runs a YouTube channel, Pyonghattan. Hyeun-seung Lee is also a by now well-known figure within the world of North Korea watchers and North Korea experts. He has worked, of course, in Washington with the Global Peace Foundation. He's still with the Global Peace Foundation. Currently, he has been with the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Colonel Maxwell has joined us for this program. He was Deputy General Manager of the China office of the North Korea Miyang Shipping Corporation from 2011 to 2014. He was also a sergeant in the North Korea military, in the Korean People's Army. He was of the 4th Corps Artillery Reconnaissance Battalion. He has extensive academic experience with the Pardee Rand Graduate School, with the East Asia Research Center, and of course, he has a degree in finance and economics from China Dongbei University, and also a degree in a bachelor in economics, so both an MBA and a bachelor's from the same institution. Also graduate of the elite Pyongyang Foreign Language School and the Pyongyang University of Foreign Studies. So without further ado, let me ask our speakers the first question today. Seo-hyun, I'm going to go to you first. You have lived in North Korea, China, South Korea, and the United States. Could you please compare your experience living in these four countries? On to you, please.
Thank you very much for your questions, and thank you for having me today. So when I live in North Korea, I took everything as they were. So I didn't know that I didn't know what the freedom means and the rights means, and then I didn't know the North Korea is actually a dictatorship. So I never suffered from hunger in North Korea, but I didn't have the full freedom as the other international society enjoy. So I realized these things when I moved to China and study abroad of there. It was very obvious that people in China they had much freedom than North Korean people. They could freely come and go, speak out their thoughts in public, and they have the um, rights to own the private cars, homes, and bank accounts, etc. But it was not that easy to change my mind since I was brainwashed. So it took me like much longer, like about a decade, to realize that the fundamental reasons that the North Korea could not open up its borders, and then the reason that people cannot live with the freedom and human rights respected. So that's and after witnessing that many of my friends and friends' families were executed and my friends were sent to political prison camp, um, not only me, my entire family come to agree that we cannot live under this regime. We cannot pass this tragedy to our next generations. So we decide to leave the country to find the freedom and also fight for the freedom of other North Korean people. So we traveled to the South Korea and stayed over there for a year. It was really amazing to how the South Korea had the all the development over the 75 years. So it was the same country before it was divided by South Korea and North Korea. We are all same nation. The only thing that made two parts different was the system, I believe. So if North Korea accepted the democracy and in capitalism instead of the socialism, I believe North Korean people would live pretty similar condition like South Korean people. But because of the security issues, we had to move to United States again. And then here, the experience in the United States was kind of very different than other experience in China, South Korea, and North Korea because I believe the culture is very different, and I'm still um, learning new things here, and then the whole experience being great. Yeah, and I'm very lucky to meet you here as well, Mr. Scarlatoiu. So, yeah, very enjoy. I'm enjoying my life at every moment here. Thank you.
Well, it's a true pleasure, Seo-hyun, to know both you and your brother. Thank you. Hyeun-seung, so please answer the same question. Also, the first question we have in the Q&A, it's a question that comes from Dr. Esther Kim Kwon-sanim, who is asking, how come that you decided to escape North Korea since you're members of the elite class, enjoying a rather wealthy life while in North Korea? and privileged life.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for inviting me for this wonderful event. And when I was living in North Korea, I thought the life is like this. Like most of North Korean people think, they only live, I mean, every other country is like the world living on the same condition and same environment, obey the leader's order and obey the party's rule. And then, you cannot travel to other countries unless you get the permission from the government. And after I graduate, discharged from the military, and I went to China, and I was stunned by Chinese, development and the freedom the Chinese people have. And I thought, oh, we have a different world from here, like just, border country in China. And I saw that China had China achieved so many things in terms of freedom and, free speech and like a travel and then freedom of movement. But I defected in 2014 and I realized South Korea has more freedom and then more joy to enjoy in your life. And then all this economic development and then those freedom they have is not came from the government. And I realized, and my experience in South Korea is not abundant because I only lived almost 1 year. And then later 2016, I moved to United States and I realized, oh, it's not comparable to other countries. The US have much freedom. And then it's honestly, I think the US people has too much freedom. And like, they enjoy the freedom as like drink, I mean, they like air they have. So I would say US life in United States is like ocean, and then life in South Korea is like a river, and the life in China is like a stream, and the North Korean life is like a pool in terms of like freedom and then life quality. Yeah, and then the question why my family decided to fact, even though we are considered as elite family. So it is 2013, late 2013, I went to Pyongyang and I think it's November. The day I arrived, I heard that one of the top associate of Jang Sung-taek, which is Kim Jong-un's uncle, was arrested. And then I was stunned by the news they got arrested because those people are considered top associates of Jang Sung-taek, and then they are actually leading the country for opening and reform the economy. And soon after they were executed, and I heard, and then after execution, 3 days after, one of the top military officials who witnessed the execution and came to, have dinner with us. I still remember my dad, my mom, and me having dinner with him, and then he explained the whole scene of execution. So more than several hundred officials took a bus to went to Kangon Military Academy that day, and they already saw two people were tied on the in the stage, and then later the shooters shooting they fired on them like with the anti-craft guns, literally the big bullets, and then the body was almost shattered by these guns. And then the surprising thing is the Kim Jong-un put Jang Sung-taek in front of them, like literally only a few meters from them. So the body and the blood was almost around him, and he was too shocked, and then he cannot hold his body. And then like the body was scattered, and they used flamethrower to burn it. After that, they announced that those bastards or those traitors can not deserve to burn in this sacred land. And then they used tank to crush it, and it's done. And then later, the people who participate in execution were all shocked, and then they were speechless. Even Jang Sung-taek cannot hold his body, and then several people helped him to take the bus, and that was the execution he described to us. And then we were shocked as well. And then I saw anger and fear from his eyes, and I heard the same story from another person several days later. And then, so we think those executions are not, shouldn't happen to this country, because North Korea is still believes a socialist country, and all the slogans are working for people, and then it's the country for people. But what kind of leader gave direct order to execute people? Even like there is no like a process of trial or something like that. So, and later we found out that my friends were executed, and several were sent to Polka prison camp, and my father's friends also the things happened to my father's friend and my sister friends as well. And then we are very tired seeing these incidents, and then we believe it's not the country we continue to live, and it's not the leader we should serve, and then we should make some differences and we make changes, but we need help from the outside, so we decide to defect.
Hyeun-seung, thank you so much. As you know, our organization, HRNK, in 2015 documented an execution by ZPU-4 anti-aircraft machine gun system at the same place, same location, Kangwon Military Academy. We actually had satellite imagery taken, acquired just minutes before this execution, buses, trailers in the background, obviously people in the stands. As you said, you're talking 4 machine gun barrels, a very big caliber, 14.5 millimeter metric style, 50 caliber bullet, our style. I don't know if you can see this. No reason for alarm. This is a corkscrew, actually, a present from my colleague Rosa Park, who's running this program. But these are huge bullets. Bodies are shattered. Bodies are pulverized. Bodies are turned into pink mist. And this is the horror that faces North Korean senior officials who were purged and their families. I am going, so we're taking questions from the audience. We mean this to be a dialogue, not a lecture. I am going to convey the first question from Colonel Maxwell to you, Hyeun-seung, because I'm going to direct this to you. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think about it while I ask Seo-hyun another question. So here it comes. Colonel Maxwell, he thanks you for your insights and your contributions. Hyeun-seung, without naming names for security purposes, could you please give us an idea whether there are people who might be able to succeed Kim Jong-un if he were no longer able to lead North Korea? Who's next? Who's next in line? Are there people who would have the legitimacy? Are there people who would have the skills to assume a leadership role? If so, what kind of support, what kind of help would they need from the United States and South Korea in order to be successful in assuming leadership? As I give you a couple of minutes to think about that, let me go to Seo-hyun and ask her the next question. Seo-hyun, you studied abroad. So North Korea allows students to study abroad. I remember that all North Korean students in Eastern Europe were recalled in 1989 when communism fell. They had witnessed some things that threatened the Kim regime, the Kim Il-sung regime in North Korea. Now, wouldn't the regime fear that students come back having experienced democracy, freedom? Wouldn't they fear that these students could start a revolution? And once North Korean students go abroad, how much do they still believe in the regime propaganda? Do they lose those beliefs? Do those beliefs stay with them? Please address that question.
Thank you very much for your questions. I think this is really a great question. So, of course, I believe North Korean regime, they worry about that students who experience democracy and freedom, try their attempts in changing North Korea after they came back. So here is the things that North Korean regime does. So first, they send very small number of students to study abroad. The numbers of North Korean students studying abroad all over the world in total, it won't be even close to a couple thousands. Like compared to other countries, I want to give you some numbers that only the United States itself, there are about 370,000 of Chinese students and 60,000 of South Korean students here in United States. So compare these numbers, I mean, you can tell it is very, very small amount of these students. They were sent to study abroad. And so the other thing is that they are all going through the background check and also are tightly being monitored and controlled even out of the North Korea. So normally a person who is in charge of these students collect their passports so that they cannot freely move around, travel to other places, and cannot think of escape. So, and then they really closely monitoring these students. They cannot watch the dramas, listen to music freely, even if they are not in North Korea. And then they cannot travel to other parts of the country where they are studying. So when I was in China, I was not able to freely travel to the only chance I can travel to other parts of China was when I participated in some activities from the school which is organized by the schools. And then they are not allowing me to study other parts of the China. So at that time, my parents was dispatched by the government to the Dalian, China. So I was only allowed to stay in Dalian with my parents. I was not able to study in Beijing or Shanghai. And that was the other condition. And then the third thing is that after the students came back to North Korea, they are getting the intensive ideology education for several months under the name of that taking the colors of capitalism out from their brain. So besides this, they will be subject to higher levels of surveilling until the regime feels safe. So North Korean regime has been seeing that the power of young generations and the collapse of other socialism countries or dictatorships. So they try their best to minimize the chances that students to be exposed to democracy and closely controls their mind and behaviors in order to keep the camps held. Yeah. And to answer your question, how much they are believing that, I would say, of course, it depends on the every person, but most of them, after they experiencing other countries, their mind is being changed, and then, but I believe it is all different. Some might only just stay in the stage that envy about the other's life, or some other could reach that level that want to bring some change into North Korea. But the answer, all they get is gonna be that the chances are less likely because there are so many obstacles is gonna waiting for them. And then the main reason that they cannot take their thoughts into action is for the sake of their entire family members, I believe.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And Hyeun-seung, I'll go back to you. And let me give you another question. It's a follow-up question from Dr. Esther Lim. In addition to Colonel Maxwell's question, what happened to Kim Kyung-Hee after her husband, Chang Song-taek, was brutally executed? Is she still alive? Is she dead? What's her status? On to you, please, Hyun-seung.
Thank you for Colonel Maxwell's questions. I think it's really good questions, and then I believe the U.S. government and South Korean government should really consider who might be the next leader. But think about it. Why? Because Kim Jong-un's ruthless running the country and then ruthless executions of the elite members, and he is replacing all the members surrounding him. So there's a lack of trust between the elites and Kim Jong-un. And I would say North Korean elites are like, they should be like Oscar nominee actors. Like they pretend to loyal to Kim Jong-un, but what they're really loyal to is the money. They're making money through Kim Jong-un's power, and then they just keep their family safe. But I would say if something wrong and if something happened, they all, go against, fight against Kim Jong-un. So if Kim Jong-un is not able to run the country, I think there is several cases. First, I think it's natural death or naturally unable to run. And then maybe there are certain members of candidates who might be the next leader, like I would say his sister Kim Yo-jong and his brother Kim Jong-chol. Obviously, they are the top considerable candidates, but I strongly oppose they shouldn't run again. And then maybe the director of OGD, Organization Guidance Department, and then the director of the Political Bureau, North Korean Army. We can narrow down several candidates, but I'm, to my shallow knowledge, I cannot confirm who will be the next leader. So we have 5 or 6 candidates. And another case, like if he was forcefully removed by someone who has military power, I would say if that person co-op against the Kim regime, and then that person could be the next leader of North Korea. But I'm sure whoever will be the next person of the leader of North Korea, he or she will not run the country like the Kim regime, because they cannot run the country as under the back to bloodline tradition, because they are not from the back to bloodline, and then they have no achievement, and then it's time consuming for building their achievement, and then like a propaganda to North Korean people. And last case, I think maybe they hide Kim Jong-un's health condition to North Korean people and international community, and then they will let body double to appear on the screen, and then several high individuals can run country together. But highly likely, I'm saying whatever the scenario is, I hope North Korea should become a free country. And the second question, I think, what happened to Kim Kyung-Hee after Chang Song-taek's execution? So after, that's very tricky question for some people, but for me, it's very clear. So May 2014, I heard that Kim Kyung-Hee was dead, because one of my friends who was sent to political prison camp, his grandfather was top associates of Kim Kyung-Hee. He was the deputy, a director of under Kim Kyung-Hee. So he was managing North Korea's light industry, the budget, and so they were very close. And then he was sent. My friend's entire family sent to Polish prison camp, and then his grandfather was ruthlessly executed at the same method the top Jang-Seung Taek's associates was executed. And I found out that almost more than 20 associates affiliated with Kim Kyung-Hee were executed. And and one more fact was the bodyguards of Kim Kyung-Hee told Kim Kyung-Hee was not the person, not the alive person. And again, I think I talked with Colonel Maxwell, explained that in North Korea, there was a two life. One is political life and then one is physical life. But North Korea emphasized political life more than physical life. So even though you are dead, they make a propaganda that your political life is continuing. So like there was a slogan that our great leader Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il is living with us forever, like that. And think about it. 2 years ago, a North Korean anti-Japanese activist, the woman who lived almost 100 years, before she died, she never had the title. She already had the title of member of the North Korean Workers' Party, and then like North Korean committee member, all the titles she got, but she was not active. She was in the bed actually. But North Korean government, they gave the title because they, respect her. So, but if you see Kim Kyung-Hee, you cannot see any title or any picture, any publication on North Korea media, which means it is a death penalty for Kim Kyung-Hee. And then we have to assume that Kim Kyung-Hee is not the person. I mean, it's in this world. So, and several people, nobody was experiencing that who actually see Kim Kyung-Hee. But I think some people might question that last year, North Korean regime showed Kim Kyung-Hee on like a TV watching some concert with Kim Jong-Un. But I would say she might be a body double. And Kim Jong-un want to show these people that Kim Jong-un is still alive. But as I say, North Korea emphasizes political life. If your political life is dead, and then the person is not the a live person. Yep.
Hyeun-seung and Seo-hyun, there is this strange quasi-religious connotation to saying that basically political life is eternal. You participate in the Senghwa Tonghwa weekly confessions. The leaders are eternal and immortal. They transcend life and death. There's truly an interesting and troubling dimension of the Kim regime cult of personality and ideology. I am going to run the same scenario. Hyeun-seung, I'm going to give you the next two questions, and then I'm going to go to Seo-hyun with the next question while I give you a couple of minutes to think about it. One comes from my Sonbenim, Stanley Kober, great supporter of HRNK. As an American, I wonder what we can do to affect the situation in North Korea. We seem to move like a pendulum from confrontation to engagement, back to confrontation. Nothing appears to work. What can we do as Americans? Another question from another great friend, Professor Gloria Steele. How likely is internal revolution in North Korea? We know possible future scenarios: war, peaceful and mutual negotiation, regime collapse, internal revolution. Well, if such revolution were possible, do you think it should be led by the elites of North Korea? And as you dwell on those questions, Hyeun-seung, let me go to Seo-hyun. Well, if you thought those questions were tough, let me give you this one. So Seo-hyun, as members of the community trying hard to improve the human rights of North Koreans, we are aware that there are some difficulties we're experiencing in South Korea. There's some pressure being placed on North Korean human rights organizations, activists. Could you please assess the impact of the presidency of President Moon Jae-in in South Korea on the North Korean human rights movement, and even more importantly, on the people of North Korea? That's a tough one. On to you.
Well, the only, I don't know if I can count this as an impact, but the only impact I can think of that the South Korean presidency bring to North Korea is that he gave the credibility to Kim Jong-un and made the North Korean public to believe the North Korean propaganda that our great leader, he is steering all of the world, and South Korea is not exception, and they are really scared of our great leader. And they are reacting toward single words that came out from their mouth. So, and I think actually the South Korean presidency made the human rights situation worse than before. The reason is that he never mentioned about the human rights issues going on in North Korea, and then I can tell that all the policies and the benefits he is trying to bring to North Korea is only for Kim Jong-un, not the North Korean people. So in terms of that, it's really, really sad to see that what is going on in both Korean countries.
Thank you for sharing, Seo-hyun. That was a tough one.
Thank you.
Hyeun-seung, back to you.
All right. So what kind of effect can give North Korea as American? I guess that was the first question, I guess. As I said, first thing I think American public should do first is we have to understand the nature of the regime. Like my mentor, like Colonel Maxwell, always raised the question that the North Korean regime have changed their strategy and the policy. I mean, the like gangster-like policy against the South Korea and United States. They have never changed the policy for 75 years. They continue that same policy, but somehow, like some people who have the good views towards North Korea. They believe North Korea can make a change, and then if we engage more with North Korean regime. But I would say, unless the Kim regime haven't changed the policy, or like they make a freedom. I mean, they provide the freedom to its people, and then I would say it won't be possible, even though we make engagement policy. We actively engage with the regime. So if we see North Korean policy, we have to understand the policy cannot. It's impossible for North Koreans to engage with United States and South Korea, but we keep pushing this meaningless engagement policy. But we have to think about other way. Why we think the pressure, like the sanctions and the information influence, because it is the main policy. It is the main strategy for the reform and change North Korea, because we hope North Korean people can change their society and make their life better by education and by informing the information. And I always say the people who armed with information is critical revolution forces, and they can actually make changes by themselves. I lived in North Korea. I lived in the United States for 6 years now, but year by year, I'm lost in hope that actually I think there's no progress to make change in North Korea. So all these like people talks about the policy, all these people talks about Kim Jong-un and the nuclear, but nothing was changed. So I do believe unless we replace or Kim Jong-un make changes internally, then or I don't see any progress or improvement conditions of human rights and freedom in North Korea. And that's to extend the question that I think American people can make their voices for North Korean human rights and then provide accurate information to the government. And then the government people make correct policy towards North Korea, not just directed by South Koreans. United States have their own policy, I guess. And the question from the Gloria, I guess, how likely internal revolution could happen. So I would say it's likely, and it's highly possible if North Korean elites, armed with information. And the reason I keep talking about information is the more information they get, and then they will realize the regime is not the best option for them and for people in North Korea. So I hope that they can make changes, and there are positive movement in North Korea because all the elites around the Kim Jong-un had lost trust of Kim Jong-un. So the people, if it's like, I think I would say if you give something like very little, and then I think they can move. For example, like a vision and the support to the elites that, the freedom and free democratic society is the best option for them. And then I hope they should understand what is freedom and the free democratic society. So, and I do believe the revolution could be led by elites. If we want like the public grassroots movement, and it needs more time, more investments, but I don't think South Koreans won't do that. And yeah, sorry, it's not like clear answer, but
Both of you are absolutely spectacular. Your English is spectacular. You're super articulate, and thank you. This is a very steep learning curve. The next comment and question come from my colleague Rick Hersevoort, who's a citizen of the Netherlands. He's our HRNK EU representative in the Netherlands. Rick proudly represents the people of the Netherlands by having a great sense of humor and being very direct, always. So he says, you haven't posted any YouTube videos in 5 months. I'm a subscriber. When are you going to post your next video? Please do. So that is not a question, that is a comment. So we look forward to your next YouTube. He also has a question for both of you. So Rick asks, what is life in Pyongyang really like? Is it anything similar to what Western audiences are being shown in documentaries, travel shows, and other media or propaganda that the North Korean regime wants us to see? For example, the Echo of Truth YouTube program. So life in Pyongyang. I'll go to Seo-hyun first.
Thank you very much. This is really interesting question. So the thing is that the reason we haven't posted yet, we are busy with our major jobs, and then the second reason was that we get the good feedbacks from the professionals or journalists, but actually get some feedbacks from the general people that it is too serious for them to keep continuing watching it. So I was researching that how I can make it more approachable to the general people. The reason we launched this Pyonghattan program is to educate the international society and have more people to feel free to watch it and then get some knowledge about North Korea when they finish the videos. So I was working that, and so I was about to make. I'm working making the new series. Actually, it's gonna be about that the echo of North Korea. So the title is gonna be like true or false behind the propaganda, and I'm gonna show the clips of these videos and talk about whether it is true or false. And I'll leave the answers for my videos, and you're more than welcome to check out like probably a couple weeks later. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. We may have to go a little bit into overtime if you don't mind, because we still have a few great questions. The next two ones come from a great friend and supporter of HRNK, Gregory McKenzie, who even sent us his son who interned with HRNK, brilliant intern. I have two questions, and I'm going to direct them one each to each one of you. So, Hyeun-seung, could you please address the effectiveness of information being provided or smuggled into the country through flash drives, micro SD cards, other means, in terms of helping the citizens of North Korea understand, number one, the current situation, number two, life outside the country? I am going to direct the second question from Greg McKenzie to you, Seo-hyun. Could you address the current living conditions of those who are not members of the elite class, the privileged class? Of course, you're part of the elites. What about the others? So, Hyeun-seung, on to you.
I would say the impact of information would different to the people based on their knowledge and then acceptance of the information. But I would give one example. And before I defect September 2014, I went to my friend's house. The friend is one of the Kim family member. He's a grandfather, and then Kim Il-sung was relative. And he was watching South Korean drama, very recent drama with his friend. And I asked him that, why do you watch this drama, even though you know that, can damage you and your friend? And then he literally asked me again, the question that, so why are you living poor in South Korea and China? And then you lived in China for several years, and then I know China developed a lot, and then there are lots of food, and then you can enjoy freedom there. Why can we live like them? He doesn't expect the South Korean people's life, but he was expecting like Chinese people's life, because they believe China is the same system with North Korea. And I was stunned by his question, and then I couldn't answer the question because at the time, I think I know the answer because of the Kim family, because Kim Jong-un and Kim Jong-il they didn't want to open the country and provide the freedom to its people. So it's all simple. If the North Korean regime decide provide the freedom to people and then let them, move to another country and free travel and the private property rights, it's all easy for North Koreans to make their life better. But because of he wants, run the country forever, he doesn't let North Korean people to do that. And then he keeps asking me about life in China. So I think that's the great impact. Even though Kim family member made a question of his own families running the country, So I hope many people can make question and then raise questions, and then I hope they can answer by themselves one day, so that the country they are living is not the best system and the best leader of the country. And then they have, I think they have to fight for their freedom and human rights. And then I think we should inform them. We will be always with them, and whatever they need, and then we will support you. That's important for them to get the support from the international community and South Korea.
Thank you, Hyeun-seung. And Seo-hyun, on to you, the lives of others. Please go ahead.
So the lives for the others is gonna be really miserable in these days, because the North Korean regime, they block the borders. So they are not getting any distributions from the regime anymore, and they cannot make any earnings from the market activities anymore. So what I've heard last month, that even those organizations from the Pyongyang, that people are not getting any rations anymore, and I cannot come up with the names, but it is one of the very important organizations in Pyongyang. So which means rest of the people, they definitely gonna be in a like worst condition. So it is hard for me to describe others' lives to you honestly, because I never went through the same condition, and then because the informations are not distributed inside of North Korea to other parts, unless you or someone who you close with live that condition, there is no way you can find out that what kind of condition other people are living in. So but from my experience, that since and what I've heard when I was in North Korea, since North Korea, there's lack of almost everything, lack of electricity, transportation, and food. What I've heard is that even people who live in Pyongyang, they sometimes like I personally walked like more than an hour because there was no transportation. And besides that, like some people who live in the high buildings, they suffer from the cold during the winter season, because there is no electricity at all. And some of the houses, actually their temperature is below the outside temperature. So I've heard that some people actually they died during the night because they are freezed. So I assume that the condition in other parts of the North Korea, other provinces, definitely gonna be very tragic. And the thing is that very clear thing is that Kim Jong-un, he closed the border in order to keep his life, regardless of others surviving. So he is not sacrificing anything for his people. He is not being responsible for his country and his people at all. So yeah, that's gonna be my answer for this question.
Well, terrific. Like all of your answers, we still have a few great questions left, and I'm going to direct them to the two of you. One comes from our friend Shaquille James, and this is going to go to you, Hyeun-seung, with no time to think about it this time. So what is something that we, or the new US administration, the Biden administration, can do to reach out to the Pyongyang elites and change their minds about North Korea? The question going to you, Seo-hyun, comes from one of our colleagues, Michelle Dang, who has just joined us, Mount Holyoke College. Michelle hails from Vietnam. given the human rights situation in North Korea, can you let us know how receptive North Korean people are to the idea of Korean reunification? What do North Korean people think about Korean reunification? And what do they think about human rights? What do they think about human rights relief and redress within the context of Korean reunification? Koreans, for one, people for 5,000 years living under the same political system for 1,000 years, same language, same culture, same history, humongous differences for more than 70 years. So culturally, do you think there could be any differences, any animosity if the two Koreas were to reunify? While you think about that, Seo-hyun, back to you, Hyeun-seung. Please go ahead.
Me. Great. Do you want me to answer first?
Yes, please, answer first.
Okay. I think new U.S. administration can do like two things, and I also urge these things to adopt new policies. And first, I would say we really think the North Korean human rights is the main priority for the new administration. And then we should let North Korean government and the elites know how serious the US government and the people think about North Korean human rights. And because I know some people criticize the US government to use North Korean human rights like as a political purpose and only by rhetoric, but I hope new administration prioritize over like North Korean human rights over nuclear weapon deal, because even though we made a deal with North Korea about North Korean nuclear weapons, it won't be solved, I mean, indefinitely, because North Korean human rights is the main core problem for all issue in North Korea. So North Korean government say, the regime always say that mentioning North Korean human rights is the anti-policy against the regime. So let's assume we made a deal and then we are not going to mention North Korean human rights forever. No, I don't think so. Many people will raise the question because those human rights violations are literally crimes against the humanity. So I think the first priority is the solving North Korean human rights. And Kim Jong-un is expecting North Korean nuclear weapon deal, but rather I think a new administration should focus human rights first. And then the second thing I want new administration should do is information campaign. And I hope that we gave information massively to the core center of the North Korea, like the Pyongyang area, so that the people living in Pyongyang realize how world see the leader of North Korea, how world see the North Korea, and then what actual reputation of North Korea is in this world. So they dreamed, and then because the propaganda of North Korean regime, they don't think North Korea is the bad country or like, living under very bad situation. They believe actually North Korea is, good country and the best system, because they have no compare and contrast information. So we should really think about why and how we give information to people. And I urge that we put more emphasis and put more effort on giving information to them so that they can make changes and they can urge to North Korean regime to make differences in people's life. And I hope that I know some people emphasize engagement policy and humanitarian aid to North Korea, but I would say the engagement policy and humanitarian aid is not this time, unless Kim Jong-un decide reform and open the country. If Kim Jong-un decide reform and open, we can provide anything they want, because reform and open means that better life for North Korean people, but not this time. What North Korean people really want is Wi-Fi, not a chocolate pie. I think somebody told me, but I just want to use that. So I hope international society remember that, not chocolate pie of South Korea, the Wi-Fi from internet. Does it make sense?
It makes perfect sense, Hyeun-seung, and you have already seen and answered the question asked by Daniel Pyeongse Cho about humanitarian aid and its impact on the human rights cause. Thank you so much. So Hyun, on to you. Unification.
First of all, North Korean people, they also want unification, but I would say the concept of the definition of reunification for North Korean people could be quite different from South Koreans' perspective. And the reason is that North Korean people, they are brainwashed that we should take over South Korea, and whenever we take over South Korea, all the resources and all the goods are gonna be just wait for us. So like people normally who are in a very miserable condition, they say it is better to have a war rather than living like this. So I think most of the North Korean people, they never thought about the peaceful unification, since that's what they are taught in by the North Korean regime, that South Korea is the subject of the reunification by arms, but not by peace. So that's gonna be the answer for the first part of the question. So actually, they do not have any understanding or concept of the human rights or freedom. So when they think about reunification, the only thing they can think of is the financial resources, or it could give them more chance to live better life. But better life means that more food or more money, since they are not aware of any freedom or the rights they can enjoy and should have. And for the second part of the question is that I'm kind of certain that there are gonna be some animosities because the gaps comes from educational background, and the financial conditions and the cultural differences definitely raise some troubles between two parts. But since we are one nation, it's not gonna be a huge problem to solve if we give enough time to both Korean countries and be more open-minded. Then this issue will, will solved easily.
Thank you so much. And after this wonderful exchange, one final question from Professor Esther Kim. Did you watch the Korean drama produced by KBS entitled Until the Azalea Flowers Bloom? Does this drama represent the elite and diplomatic circles in North Korea? I mean, there have been several South Korean TV dramas, the Landing TV series, and you know what I'm talking about, that have attempted to depict the life of the elites in North Korea. Some of the producers and directors had former North Koreans as advisors. Do you think these South Korean dramas accurately depict the lives of the elites in Pyongyang? Question to both of you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. And then I'm not sure the title of the drama the Professor Kim asked, Until Azalea Flowers Bloom. But I'm sure most of South Korean dramas are circulated in North Korea. So I haven't watched South Korean drama for several, like more than 7 years. So I'm not, I can say anything about it. But what I want to tell is North Korean people is eager to seek information and like entertainment materials, because they don't watch North Korean dramas and TV series because there is no electricity. So all the electricity they generate by themselves using solar panel, and then they bought like the machine for generating electricity, and then they don't waste their electricity to watch North Korean propaganda. Rather, they watch South Korean dramas and then US Hollywood movies. So I'm pretty sure lots of movies and dramas circulated in North Korea. And I watched Crash Landing on You, I guess. But because somebody recommended, our family enjoyed watch, and it was very funny. And then the two main characters are very, well act. They, outstanding act. But some like details, especially like the Pyongyang area, and then some elements they represent, like North Korean kids freely travel to outside, and then they went to concert and participate in something like that, and then I'm not sure it's possible. It's only for certain people, and then only recognized by the regime. And and I'm not saying it's not impossible, but those people who act like that already executed. So, I mean, many North Korean elite kids know how it's dangerous, living like that. So, I would say, yeah, there are some certain points it's not very well depicted.
I will say, yeah, since it's drama, some of the parts are exaggerated. I mean, it is not impossible. It is not impossible or incorrect, but like mostly being exaggerated. And there are some parts being described well. So, um, and I'm talking about the Crash Landing on You, and I'm not quite sure about other movies, but I think it is a good attempt to try to make that kind of content to show the different lives in North Korea and South Korea. And mainly for the North Korean people, when they watch it, it's going to be a huge impact on them. Then they can imagine the lives in South Korea um, and understand it vividly that, yeah, people in South Korea, they are definitely are in a better condition than us, and the life in South Korea is much better than in North Korea. They can get, they can pay off for their labors, and they can have freedom to walk around, and they can wear whatever they want, and nobody is talking about their haircut, their fashion styles, and nobody just walk in their home without any notifications ahead, right? So I think, yeah, that's gonna be some details that I can agree with, and some of them are, as my brother mentioned, that it could be really rare chance to happen for the North Korean people, like travel to other countries while you are studying abroad in certain area. So yeah, we never had that chance, by the way. So I'm not quite sure it is possible to other elites.
I never traveled abroad until age 20 after communism fell in communist Romania. My first trip was when I went to South Korea as the first Romanian ever to study there. A lot to talk about, the three of us, definitely. We have one final very interesting comment from an anonymous attendee who recommends Bandi's book, Bandi Kobal. It's a really good book written by an author or multiple authors inside North Korea. So before I thank our speakers and everybody else, let me announce our upcoming programs on June the 10th, Thursday, 4 to 5 p.m. My colleague Do-hyun Jake Kim, also a North Korean escapee, is going to be our guest on this program. He's a member of our research team, former North Korean, currently completing his undergraduate studies at Utah Valley University. The following week, we will announce the date, will be report number 50 for HRNK, authored by the none other than the author of the first ever report by HRNK, David Hawk, a report on recommended UN action on North Korean human rights. That said, let me thank our participants, friends, supporters of HRNK, colleagues for joining us today. You two, Hyeun-seung and Seo-hyun, have been absolutely delightful guests. You are true leaders of this community. We do have to listen to you. Your voices must be heard. As Rick said, we look forward to your next YouTube programs, and we look forward to staying in touch, and we look forward to continuing to identify creative ways. And by that, I mean, once again, peaceful change, creative ways to bring peace, prosperity, reconciliation, human rights, democracy, prosperity to the entire Korean Peninsula. I know how to order my next dessert. Wi-Fi, not choco pie, please. I know how to greet our colleagues. First, we take Pyonghattan response, then we take Pyongyang. Thank you. You two are a great inspiration to us all. And again, we'll stay in touch, and we look forward to much better days ahead. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you,
so
Greg.
much.
Thank you for all of you to participate in this event. Thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to more opportunity to work with you again.
By all means,
Right.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.